Very much all for joining us here on the webinar today. We're going to be talking about two different topics here in this webinar. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about why we feel the browser is the #1 security risk to businesses right now, and how that's sort of an unavoidable problem. And then second, we're going to talk about our philosophy of how to solve that issue, how to make the browser a secure option, and then roll into a demo of the product that we've built to address that, called Passages. I think we all have a love-hate relationship with our browsers. It's sort of an unavoidable necessity of life. There's no way realistically to opt out of using the web. You have to follow links. You have to look at information. You need to use the web to do almost any kind of interaction from banking to research to working with partners to filling out your time cards. Everything is happening on the web these days. But it's the source of amazing pain and frustration, particularly to IT and security staffs, because it's the source of so many breaches that come in. Right? It's the source of many good things. Right? It's powerful, universal, flexible, fun, necessary. It does what we want. So it's not like you can walk away from the browser. There's no way we're going to say, no more browsers, we all need to use some other kind of tool. But it's fundamentally a defenseless thing. And it's defenseless in two really important and very different ways. Now, first off, the browser really by itself is less like a tank than like a trike. It's by its nature vulnerable as an application. And the first reason for that is that browsers are big. Browsers are enormous, complicated pieces of software that have to do a huge variety of tasks. The typical browser has over 15 million lines of code in it. It has to be able to render every kind of content under the sun. It has to allow you to go to any kind of URL anywhere in the world and basically view anything. And so trying to address all those capabilities has turned it into this monstrosity of spaghetti, and it's evolving fast. And it also supports plugins. So now you're not just vulnerable to the browser's code itself, but you have vulnerabilities from everything that runs in that browser. I mean, let's just start with Flash, right? The obvious 800 elephant in the room that is the source of just innumerable major security breaches. But yet still, so many websites require Flash in order to work properly. You've got search bars. You've got social media. You may remember from last year there was Superfish, which was a semi-helpful browser plugin, but that actually installed a fixed root certificate to which the private key was installed on the computer. So suddenly giving absolutely anyone in the world the ability to run an SSL, man-in-the-middle attack against your browser just because you stuck a browser plugin in there to try to accomplish some minor support task. And so the browser has a lot of hair on it. In addition to the insecure browser, there's this ecosystem of insecure things that surround it. And this is almost an impossible task because there are actually full programming languages in there. In fact, most browsers have at least 4 full programming languages that they can execute. And so any website on the internet can send you a program that's embedded in the web page you're looking at that your browser is then expected to execute. HTML5. HTML used to just be a little bit of a rendering language. It's now a full programming language. You can write Turing-complete programs in HTML5, of course, Java, JavaScript, Flash. You might have Silverlight. You might have others. And each of those is sort of formally impossible to secure. You can never know all of the possible states a general-purpose programming language might put your browser into. And in fact, we see over and over, especially with Java, but really with any of these, vulnerability after vulnerability that comes out that allows people to send code to your browser, which then exploits it and allows people to attack your other systems. But it's bad enough that you've got the browser inherently vulnerable. You might say, well, why don't we just use other tools? We've got a whole arsenal of security things that we built, from firewalls to intrusion detection to malware detection systems. Why can't we just wrap a bunch of those around the browser and we'll be safe then? Well, there's some problems with that, some that are characteristic to the browser and some that are more general. To start off with, once the anti-malware vendors are saying antivirus is dead, it's time to take this seriously. Standard signature-based antivirus is simply not going to get you there. There are too many 0 days. People are building, almost all of their viruses are polymorphic. I just saw a study that said 97% of malware detected on endpoints was unique to that one endpoint. So the bad guys are now morphing the virus for every single install. So trying to build any kind of signature-based system that's going to be effective at stopping certainly the smart attackers is sort of a lost cause. And of course, you don't have any time to look at it, right? When you're trying to firewall this, these things are coming through in real time. People are not willing to click on a link and then wait 5 minutes for something to happen. They want that video to load now. They want to look at the document right now. Everything has to happen instantaneously. So you can't do deep inspection. And the other problem is you have to have holes in your firewall, because firewalls were originally built to keep people on the outside of the wall from making incoming connections that you didn't want them to. You could set up fairly simple rules. It would say, here's who's allowed to access my systems, here's the ports they can come in, here's the kinds of content I expect to see, and really lock it down. The problem with the browser is it's making outgoing connections. It's going out to servers on the internet and saying, please give me this content. So these are all initiated from inside the secure perimeter. And in general, firewalls are designed to believe that those are all okay. And then secondarily, the web, unlike other protocols, really supports absolutely every kind of content. So you could quite reasonably be wanting and legitimately be wanting to get just about anything. And so trying to build firewalls and content inspections that can tell the difference between something that is kind of scary that you wanted to download and something that's kind of scary that you were tricked into downloading or that you shouldn't want to download, that's almost an impossible problem to ask the firewalls to solve. And in fact, we see them failing on a regular basis. So you look at the number of patches, right? Your average, your main security browsers, these are 2014 numbers, but 13 was similar, 15 is similar. We're seeing hundreds of major security patches in every single browser every year. And in any given year, one of them may look a little better than the other, but at the end of the day, there's actually not much to differentiate between the different browsers, in my opinion, just in terms of security against vulnerabilities to exploits. They're all having lots and lots of problems. Over 90% of the undetected malware that gets into businesses is coming through the browser. We say 68% of all malware delivered through the browser. The rest of it mostly is coming in through email. And of all of the applications that people run on endpoints, the 5 most vulnerable applications are all either browsers or browser plugins. So we're not in a good place. The browser is Swiss cheese, and there's just no suggestion that anyone has a solution to that for the browser itself. So how do you say goodbye to your vulnerable browser while still being able to browse the web? You know, this is the question. How do you keep using that browser that you want while being able to click on things without putting your enterprise at risk? So we've developed a security model, and it has 6 core principles that we sort of consider prime directives. These are things that influence every aspect of the systems, and we see these directives being violated all over the place, just like Picard was continuously violating the prime directive. But we really believe in these. The first is application compromise will happen. No matter what you've got, that browser in particular, it's going to get owned. And you just have to make sure that that is not then the start of a cascade of disaster that leads to your enterprise being compromised. 2, detection of the compromise will fail, or you're going to be too late. So if you've got anti-malware, if you've got scanners looking for things, and you're trying to do that in real time, by the time they flag and go, oh, that thing you just downloaded looks like it was malware, it's already probably taken over your computer. It may have infiltrated itself. It may have left something behind that it can't find. It may have already sent out your address book or sent emails to all of your contacts or moved laterally within your organization. Even seconds can be too late. And often these things are detected much, much later. If you look at advanced persistent threats, by the time they're detected, well, the average time to detection is 6 to 9 months. according to the incident responders. And that's just really, really disastrously late. We believe fundamentally that the damage from compromises can be minimized to negligible levels if you can capture and contain the malware. And so the key is you can contain the compromised browser. The browser is irreducibly vulnerable to attack, but if you've got the proper kind of quarantine procedures in place, you get a CDC level 3 browser, then you can work with Internet Ebola and still be safe, and it's all trapped inside that secure containment. It doesn't get out and infect your population. It doesn't take over your networks. And we believe that repairs can and must be automated. It's amazing the amount of time that companies I talk to spend having their security people run around re-imaging people's desktops because they've found malware on them. And that means that the guy's spending hours out there re-imaging the computer and loading all the files on there and getting it up and working. And of course, the worker is now unproductive for that many hours while he's waiting for someone to come in and do all those repairs and re-image the computer. Huge waste of manpower and effort. A ridiculous situation. We think it needs to be instantaneous and easy. And finally, number 6, we believe that targeted attacks are the biggest existential risk right now. There's always going to be untargeted attacks. We will always be getting the Nigerian print scams. We'll all get the email with a bad attachment. But those are fairly easy to detect. We've all learned how to avoid those, how not to click on the bad thing. And frankly, it's probably old malware. Your antivirus might, in fact, pick up most of those in many cases. But the targeted attacks, they're the ones where someone said, I'm not just going after a random person, I'm going after you or your organization specifically. And I actually have a whole talk at RSA, at B-Sides, about the trend towards targeted attacks and why not only are they more effective, but they're more damaging because they know who they're going after, they can craft the attack for that purpose, they can craft the malware they're using to be effective against their target because they can profile the target's technology, and then once they get in, they're going to do more damage because they've already planned what they're going to do. It's not serendipity that they stumbled on your business and then they're looking around going, wow, what might I find? No, when they go in, they already know what they want to find. They find it, they get it out, and they already have a plan of how to dispose it. If they want to make money, they already have ideas on how to fence it or leverage it in some kind of scam or fraud. Or, if it's just to damage you, they've already planned how they're going to drop it to Pastebin. They've got a plan for their PR. They know how they're going to roll out all of the press releases. I think the Sony breach was really a study in the art of how to just devastate a company with the Chinese water torture of releases of new emails and new facts and new revelations, so the story would never go away and the damage and the bleeding never stopped happening. That's what you see in a targeted attack, which you just don't see in random attacks where someone just happens to get into your business. So I've now made the case that you're hosed if you use a browser and we should all stop surfing the web. Except we feel that there is, in fact, a correct way to handle this. We're calling it passages. So the starting point is you've got your browser on your computer in your network at your organization, and it's vulnerable and potentially infected. So the first thing we're going to do is we put a virtual machine running on that desktop. And this is a full Linux virtual machine. And we like Linux as the guest operating system, both because we can harden it. You can really reduce it. You can strip out all unneeded components. You can make it tiny. Delete all the scripting languages and shells and everything else that someone might try to use to drop their exploit. But even better than that, no one writes malware for Linux as an endpoint. Lots of people attack it as servers because Linux kind of owns the server market. But as an endpoint desktop, Windows owns the desktop, followed by Mac. The number of people who run Linux as their endpoint operating system is minuscule, and most of them are security researchers that the bad guy doesn't want to attack anyway because he doesn't want to attract attention. So we now run the browser, standard Firefox, inside this virtual machine on the desktop. And you'll see later it looks like a normal browser. But we take it another step. We VPN all the traffic in and out of that virtual machine out to our secure cloud. So even if some compromise happens inside that virtual machine, not only can it attack the desktop because it's trapped in a VM, and that VM has no communication with the local desktop, no shared files, no ability to talk to the hardware, but it can't talk to the local network either. That VPN is the only path in and out. So all of the traffic has to go down that. It can't scan your local network. It can't, any web page can include JavaScript that'll enumerate your entire local network and all the devices on it and discover your non-routable IP space, and then even launch guest password attacks against those devices. If you've got a compromise of the VM, you'd be able to try to do those kind of attacks in a more sophisticated way from there. But with passages all trapped inside this VPN, nothing can get out. Your traffic then pops out of a location of your choice and goes out to the internet. This actually prevents those targeted attacks in the first place. We're seeing lots of the watering holes out there now. Actually, they'll infect a major website, but then only attack a tiny fraction of a percent of the visitors, only the people they want, because they can see their IP address, they can see their cookies, they can recognize them. Well, with passages, because you're coming out of our IP addresses and we strip out all the trackers and all the browsers look the same, browser fingerprinting doesn't work, you cannot be targeted by websites like that. Unless you're actually logging in and identifying yourself, you look like every other passages user. So for those, the most scary targeted attacks on the web, you actually are not just resistant to them, that attack never even happens to you, which is pretty cool. Now, of course, you still need to be able to do things like print, like save files. And so we have another application running next to the browser that handles all of that for you. So it becomes the default browser handler. So when you click on a link in your email, everything automatically happens. Really nice and transparent to the end user. But as you can see, there's no direct communication from that to the virtual machine. That's one of our prime directives. You cannot allow the virtual machine to talk to the system. It has to be isolated. It has to be that class 3 biohazard containment. And so, in fact, all of the communication between the host app and the virtual machine happens indirectly through a cloud. So, worst thing happens, you actually get an infection in that virtual machine. What does that mean? Well, it can't really do anything. It can't attack your systems. It can't get to your files. It can't read your email. It can't attack your network. And so it's trapped. And as soon as you close your browser, as soon as you close your last tab, we actually burn the entire thing to the ground. We delete the entire virtual machine, all of the files, all the data in it. And then next time you want to open a browser, boom, we create it from a known cryptographically signed copy on the disk, absolutely clean, no trackers, no malware, nothing that's going to hurt you. And this has nothing to do with detection. We don't care if it's a 0-day. We don't care if it's a completely undetectable, novel kind of attack, because we don't rely on detecting it. We recover no matter what and instantaneously. And that's what prevents having to have the people running around and reimaging everyone's computer every couple of days every time they click on a bad link. All they need to do is, oh, something weird happened. You get an alert in the browser that says something mucked with a file. You just go close, boom, everything's wiped out. Click the link again, everything opens up again, and you're back into a known, clean, safe environment instantaneously. We've actually had customers talk to us who say they see an ROI from this product separate from any protection against these catastrophic failures, just from money savings and having people run around and reimage computers all day. Just kind of shocking. This is really designed for enterprise use. We are coming out with a consumer version this year. And in fact, we're going to be starting off by giving it away to everyone who was impacted by the OPM breach, the Office of Personnel Management, where everyone's backgrounds were stolen. Most of our backgrounds were stolen. That's why we felt passionate about it. But the current version that we're releasing really is highly optimized for the enterprise. Has central management, central deployment, total user monitoring, activity reporting, integrates with your SIM systems, integrates with your GPO or SCCM deployment systems. It's very easy to manage for small enterprises up to many multi-thousands of seats. And we actually have multi-thousand seat deployments that we've been rolling out, and very easy to manage those even with lots and lots of people on it. So let's roll to the demo. So real quick, I'm going to hop over. Always exciting when you are then starting to do things live. So as you can see, Passages looks like a browser. And at some level, that makes this the worst demo ever, because it looks exactly like every other browser you've ever used, and it works like every other browser you've ever used. And so that's one of the keys, is that to the end user, there's absolutely nothing special or complicated going on. This looks completely generic to your end users, so that they don't need to be trained. They don't need to get new skills to use passages, to surf the web, to do whatever workflows they've got. So let's bring up a page. Go ahead and bring up cnn.com. Boom, up it comes. Now you may see a little bit of lag on your side because this is going over a WebEx. This is actually popping up very fast for me. So hopefully you're getting the same sort of experience that I was. But you know, all the graphics are there, all the content's there. So because everything's secure inside this VPN and inside this VM, we don't need to turn off Java or JavaScript or Flash. You can choose to do that if you want, but you have the option of saying, no, I want all the content. I want the web to work. When I go to a restaurant, I want the menu to show up. And that allows you to, you know, visit anything you want anytime you want. So let's take a look at something a little more aggressive. We'll take a look at a trailer for The Force Awakens. Good, it's muted. So I'm viewing this on my screen, and this is absolutely glass smooth. There's no hiccups, there's no glitching. The video is running just like I was watching it, you know, on a TV or in a movie theater. So I don't know how this is looking to you guys, just because this is, of course, hanging off my my webinar software. So just to give you a sense of a comparison, let's hop over here, and I have the same video exactly queued up in my other browser. And so you should see that you're getting pretty much the same effect. Both of them are equally smooth to me. They both work equally well. And this applies to all content. So you can go and use you know, highly interactive Ajax-based tools. You can use Google tools, things like that. And that interaction is going to be really smooth. You don't have a laggy experience. Even if there's a high latency connection, things can buffer in the normal way. So it works exactly as well as your normal browser would. For the same kind of content compared to, you know, from Passages to Safari or Chrome or whatever you're used to using, the behavior is going to be exactly the same, regardless of how good your network connection is. So let's hop back to Passages here. So let's go ahead. You do occasionally need to download things, so let's Google something. Go ahead and look for some, oh my, someone's done something very, very wrong to these cats. But let's go ahead and save the image. Who knows where I got this image from? It looks like it's in Russian, which is a little frightening. And boom, file scan complete. You can now safely access your files in Safehold. So what's happened is actually that file is come down, it's been real-time streamed up to that secure cloud, and then we've beat on it with a bunch of different scanners. We've hit it with Virus, which is like 65 different scanners. We've hit it with ClamAV and with ESET, both of which have, in addition to their signature scanners, other kinds of scans that they use. And we've recently added Cylance, which actually uses machine learning to extract features out of the software to identify exploits and Trojans and other kinds of malware. It looks at millions and millions of features. And in fact, there's no way to look at the rules it's got. Humans could never write these rules, but at the same time, it's almost impossible to bypass them. We're really excited to have a partnership with Cylance, which allows us to be really effective at stopping this stuff. But it says it's found it, so I can come up and go ahead, open Safehold. There's that JPEG. A simple quick double click, boom, it's already downloaded. And I can open it in my downloads folder, which I'm not going to show you. So that's really quick. But let's say we want to go somewhere a little scarier. So I'm going to go to malwaredomainlist.com, which is a fun website. And let's just grab the first exe we see. And so this is just a website that captures live bad websites. And so I'm going to go to one of these, and I have no idea what we're getting. But it's going to go ahead, download the file, and bam, file scan complete. This has been quarantined due to a possible infection. Safehold comes up. We can see it in the quarantine. as a user, I am not able to go in and access any of these quarantined files. They're completely blocked from my use. And so if this was a drive-by download, for example, we would have scanned it. But even if for some reason the scanning hadn't picked it up, it never automatically downloads. You're basically immune to drive-bys because of this two-step process. When something tries to push a download to me, it might get into our downloads directory on our secure server. But then I would need to go into Safehold and say, yes, please transfer that file to my local computer. That cannot be automated from inside the browser, and that stops the entire problem of these automated drive-by downloads from happening. However, the admins do have access to this, and they have access to a tool called Insight. Sure, it's still, nope, I need to log in again. All right, so here we are in Insight. And you can see we have, for this demo account, we only have 15 licenses, of which 14 are deployed. So you can see your license count. You can see the websites that are being visited most often, easily export that to CSVs. You can look at your overall activity, behavior, how many users have been logging into passages each day. So today it was 5, yesterday it was 2. We can see how many sites they're visiting, how many different URLs are being visited. Oh, and this get passages, that's the name of our domain. As a customer, we could actually have multiple domains set up, so you could see multiple different domains in the list. And the list of top websites, see I'm hitting McAfee quite a bit, Yahoo, malware domain list, because I've been doing a lot of demos, YouTube, Google. With an active site, you'd be able to see a spike. So if there was someone launching an attack, there was some sort of a redirect, you'd suddenly see new URLs popping onto this. Very easy to quickly triage what's being actively visited. But we also support drill downs. You can look by date, look at individual users, what pages they went to, when they went to it, how often they went there. You can drill down by domain. And in fact, if there's form submissions, you can even click and look at the contents of the forms they're viewing, so you can see what was in that form submission. So very easy to quickly drill down and get data about user activity. We also support export of all of this, so you can very quickly dump this to your SIEM system or other tools that you've got so that it can see, you can analyze that there if you don't want to use yet another dashboard. But here on the dashboard, we can drill down. We've got the quarantines, and in fact, you can see the new downloads that I've been downloading and all the different malwares that we've collected, and they're all showing up right here in Insight. And in fact, the administrators are also getting real-time emails every time there's an alert that Passages has detected some kind of a malware coming down. Passages also detects any changes to the environment within Passages. So if malware, even before it gets to Safehold for scanning, tries to install any files whatsoever, because it's such a restricted and locked down environment, we'd immediately detect any attempts to change or add new files into the environment, immediately throw an alert the admins, and inform the user that they should be shutting down their browser so they immediately revert back to a known safe environment. And then we have an administrator tool as well, so you can go in, take a look at all of your users, easily control what their settings are, add them to groups, give them admin privileges, create, add them to your license key, delete. You can upload large quantities of users, so if you're setting up initially, you could drop in a CSV file with thousands of users at once, automatically set them up. And you can view your quarantines. But Passages, in addition to destroying everything at the end of every session, does persist a couple of things. For example, you can go in and, let's see, you can look at your bookmarks. You can see I don't actually have many bookmarks, but there's a few bookmarks there in my bookmarks toolbar. So those get saved between sessions. As well, the user history gets saved. So you can take a look at all of the pages I've been to, all the websites I've looked at, and that's all persisted in a database, so that's safe. And finally, you can install plugins. So you can go into add-ons, and we've pre-tested and approved a whole bunch of different plugins that you can automatically install, things like LastPass, I use that all the time, autofill forms, Firebug, Ghostery, different kinds of privacy tools, and we're adding new ones all the time based on requests from our users. So that allows us to have you use these, and if they have persistent data, that also gets persisted into our database so that when you reopen the browser, the same plugins are already installed and they're already configured. You can install any plugin you want within a given session, but if it's not one of our approved ones, it'll automatically disappear at the end of the session because we're destroying the entire environment. And finally, you can choose where you want to come from. So you can choose what location. Right now, there's North America and Europe. We have a couple of internal ones for our own testing purposes, and we support custom ones for people who need to be able to come out of a particular location in the world. This is both for performance reasons, but also in many cases the content you're looking at will vary geographically, and this would allow you to see pricing or website behavior across different locations, which can be extremely valuable looking at competitors, but also even just testing your own website to make sure that its behavior is proper, it does proper localization and languages and things like that. And then at the end of the session, when you change location or when you just close the browser, quit, close the last tab, whatever you want to do, everything is destroyed. So already Passage's environment has been reduced back to nothing. We've destroyed all of the cookies, the malware, the cache, the history, super cookies, no matter what's been going on in there, that's been eliminated. And next time I click on a link, Passages would pop back up just like any other browser, but none of that would be there. All right, so thanks for sitting tight. I see we have some questions, so I want to get to those. And please, if you've got any questions, jump into the questions section inside the GoToWebinar app, and I'll try to get to all of these. So in terms, it says Windows XP, this is cross-platform, so we can support a broad range of Windows platforms. I think we're not officially supporting XP right now. It's Windows 7 and up, and Mac. So we're Windows and Mac friendly, so you can use either platform freely. We've seen so many security tools that are Windows only, and it seems sort of insane to ignore 10 to 20% of your employees, or with a lot of the .coms we're talking to out in the Silicon Valley, like 90% of their employees that are using Mac. Right now, the guest browser in the VM is Firefox only, so we will be supporting Chrome soon. It's Firefox first, and we're looking at other browsers down the road. Where does that metric come from? The 5 most vulnerable applications are all browser plugins. Let me ask Jessica to make a note of that one. Your name in the questions. Let me get back to you on that. I know I've got a footnote on the reference from that, so we'll get back to you on where that came from. Can you use your own VPN? You can. The VPN inside the virtual machine, though, is required for all of those communications back and forth between the guest tool. As long as that VPN has access to the public internet, that works just fine. We've actually done a lot with nested VPNs. In fact, I have a VPN to our office, and I use Passages, and so I'm running the Passages VPN inside our conventional VPN all the time, and really, I don't see any impact from it. We, as they say, try to eat our own dog food, and that's actually one of the use cases I have almost continuously. So someone asking how if the browser sandbox, how do you download files? I think I answered that, but if you've got more questions on that, please re-ask it. We do some data collection on the threat. Someone's asking if there's an awareness for potential threats during browser connectivity that could be harvested for future mitigations. We're not focused on analytics, but anything we pick up as a hostile malware file, we would flag for, put into quarantine, and the admins would be able to download that and analyze that on some safe machine of theirs. As well as we do provide some analytics if we see something trying to make alterations within the Linux VM. We'd capture that. Realistically, we see very, very little. One of the interesting things about passages, and actually I didn't show it, is that you can view PDFs and Word docs entirely within the browser. It's amazing how rarely we find people actually downloading files. The number of downloads per person per day is in the low single digits to sub-single digit numbers. So we actually don't pick up very many. For most people, if you're looking for some fire hose of data about attacks, because the attacks just fail in the first place, they don't even execute against the Linux VM, we really just don't see very much. Most of the effect we're having is stopping it at that first layer, and the rest of our protections are part of our security in depth. Great question about how does a VPN get established with a captive portal? You'll need to open, right now you'll need to open a conventional browser to go through the portal and then fire up passages. However, that's been something we're asked a lot, and in one of the upcoming versions, we'll automate that, so we'll have a separate browser with direct connection within the VM that you'll be able to use first, and then we'll switch over to a browser that is separated from that, that brings up the VPN and runs securely after the captive portal has been bypassed. Do downloads come to the client and then get re-uploaded to the Safehold cloud? It is actually happening simultaneously. Yeah, there is a round trip. What we're doing is the downloads directory actually lives on the cloud and is mounted on the desktop. So as it's downloading, it's streaming back up simultaneously. So you don't end up doubling the download time. We just suck up both upload and download bandwidth as that's happening. If we scan, do you not need antivirus? Probably not. You probably can't get rid of antivirus because you're still getting emails, you're still sticking thumb drives in your computer, you still have other channels of attack. We're doing, our darndest to make sure that you're absolutely secure against web-based attacks, and that's the biggest risk, but it's certainly not the only risk. You're still vulnerable to other paths. So unfortunately, you can't walk away from all of your other tools just yet. How do you deploy passages to all users? So like I said, you can give out just a download link. If people have their account set up, you can send them an email, say, here's your link, here's your initial username and password, go reset it. If you've got a large deployment, we support the GPO, SCCM-based centralized deployment, so you can blast it out to your entire customer base all at once. Like I said, very easy to create large CSV files with all of your users and then import that into passages so you can bulk update them. And we support having multiple administrators with different kind of roles and accesses, so you could have different groups of users and a different administrator devoted to each one, so you don't have one person responsible for administering thousands of accounts. What's the process to redirect URLs from the native browser to the passages browser? Great question. That helper app can actually be registered as your default browser. So you just go into Windows or Mac and say, no, passages is my default browser, and then when you click any link, it automatically opens in the passages browser. We actually support whitelisting of sites because many of our customers have internal portals that they need to reach that would not be accessible from the outside internet, or they require some ancient version of Internet Explorer because there's some legacy application. So you can set those up, and actually when you hit those inside passages, we'll spawn that external browser to allow the user to go there. And our recommended best practice is actually to set up the firewall rules on the endpoints to only allow that browser to visit those whitelisted sites and nothing else. And that ensures that all their traffic's going through passages normally, but when they need to hit something inside the firewall, it automatically pops that other browser and makes it transparent. Someone's asking, how does this compare to Tor? And some people are really interested in passages because of the anonymity aspects, and in fact, it has very strong anonymity. And we've been building anonymity tools for government, for consumers, parts of Ntrepid go back over 20 years. So when we build these tools, we know how to minimize our data retention. And in fact, for our consumer version of Passages, we will retain absolutely zero data about where our users go, what they look at. And we have this track record. We've got 20 years history of doing this for millions of users without ever having had a breach. Tor is a distributed system. It's run by volunteers, any of whom can sniff the traffic and have been shown to do so, both by demonstrating that when you leak certain kinds of information, it gets used against you, as well as lots of academics actually publishing papers on how they sniffed traffic and modified it and what kind of attacks they were allowed to do. As well, the performance impacts are terrible because it's multiple hops, because they're volunteer servers. It's really, really, really slow. Whereas with Passages, you're going to our infrastructure. We own all our own hardware, so the system is very, very fast and allows it to, to be usable and give you the security and the privacy. And in fact, Passages is derived from tools that we built for the national security community to do online investigations and operations. So we've been building tools for use against extremely hostile entities for extremely privacy-sensitive people for decades. So we've really got that dialed in. We know how to provide those kind of tools. Is there an on-premises solution? Yes, there is an on-premises solution. The way we do that is we actually deploy the cloud into your network at the edge of your network on virtual machines, so it all works within VM clusters, and the scanners live on that. So you can still get the scanning, and you'd be able to plug in your own tools at that point if you've got the local deployment. Most of our customers go cloud, but we do have some of our larger, most sensitive customers with on-prem deployments. When you do that as well, another advantage of the on-prem is that you can tie directly into your own LDAP or domain controllers and actually control Passages accounts directly from your own systems. Can you access the Tor network through the browser? Not right now. We do not currently have Tor support within the Passages environment. And frankly, it's really not been something people have been demanding because they're already getting the identity protection and the anonymity through Passages with high performance. And they're blended with all other Passages users simultaneously. How long does the browser take to open? Because it's running in a full VM. Generally, it takes about 15 seconds for me the first time I open it in a day. And then after that, I generally leave it running in the background because I've got lots of open tabs. And each time then I want to re-access it, it's taking a fraction of a second. That round trip, when you click, it goes to the helper app, up to our cloud, and back down. That all happens, faster than I as a human can really notice. What hypervisor do we use right now? Passages is built around VirtualBox, and yes, we are Windows 10 friendly with DeviceGuard, CredGuard, and VSM. I think we're going to need to capture that. I'm not confident in my answer about that off the top of my head. So Jesse, if you can catch that, we will make sure to get back to you, Chad. Did I cover mobile? I did not cover mobile. We're looking very hard at mobile security with Passages, and I'm asked this a lot. This came up actually a ton at the RSA conference. At the moment, we don't see this as a particular issue. There is mobile malware, right? And especially on Android, people are getting compromised. But they're getting compromised through third-party app stores and downloading rogue applications and Trojans. I have yet to see a report of any mobile device, Android or an iPhone, getting compromised through the browser. You go to a bad website, you click a link, and suddenly your phone is taken over. That just doesn't seem to be happening. Physical attacks, attacks with possession of the phone, attacks over the cord, and like I said, apps, lots of that stuff. But as far as we can tell, there is just no active in the wild threats against mobile devices that way. In fact, in the last year's Verizon threat report, they had a quote that I just loved. They said, "I've got 99 problems and mobile malware isn't even 1% of it." So in general, mobile malware is a tiny problem, and in particular, mobile browser attacks seem to be non-existent. So it's something we're watching really closely, but it turns out it's difficult to do what Passages does on on a mobile device. We've got some ideas, but it's not a priority for us because it's just not where the attacks are. And like I started off talking about in this webinar, we're really focused on trying to triage where the problem is. And to us, the spurting arterial wound of security is browsers on desktops. And so that's where we're laser focused. How SIM integration implemented? We're dumping our data records in standard file formats that you can just automatically import into your SIEM right now. That was the easiest way for us to do it that was sort of cross-platform compatible, so you could be using, Splunk or ArcSight or whatever, and it would be compatible across the entire range. What functions of a proxy can I do in the browser? Yeah, so the admin, I didn't show this, has access to whitelisting and blacklisting. You can set up rules. And in fact, we're going to be implementing some third parties to allow even more sort of pattern-based and website type-based filtering. So you'd be able to put in policies, say no adult websites, no where sites, what have you. That's not in there yet, but that's actually going to be coming as a customer option very soon. But right now, either whitelisting or blacklisting, you can go in and set up rules to say what sites users are allowed to go to or not. So again, another person asking about XP. Jesse, for everyone who asked about XP, let's just go double check. I know it's not on our officially supported list, but I'm fairly certain it works. You also need to have a modern enough CPU that supports the virtualization technologies. So there's some hardware constraints, although we work on fairly basic hardware, but you still need to at least have the virtualization support in the CPU. So we can get back to you with more specific answers. And this entire webinar is being recorded with all of the slides and everything else. So if anyone had video problems or audio problems, we'll actually be getting that up on the website this afternoon. So you'll be able to see the entire thing and sit through my blathering one more time. A question about unencrypted traffic within SSL TLS. That's actually a really interesting question because a lot of web proxies have a problem with secure web pages because they can deep scan all of the traffic going in and out unless it's a secure website. And then if it's a secure website, it's encrypted and all you get to see is the site they're going to. Or some of the tools then do a man-in-the-middle attack on the SSL, break it, decrypt it, read it, and then re-encrypt it. That has all kinds of security implications that make us pretty uncomfortable. We actually capture all the traffic in the browser because we've designed the browser. We've instrumented Firefox in a bunch of different ways to make it work within passages. We then get to capture all of the URLs at the browser as it's making the requests, and that happens before the SSL. So we get everything without having to muck with the security of the SSL connection itself. Multi-platform support, just Mac and Windows right now. But in fact, we're a Mac shop. The demo you saw me running has been all on Mac, but it's equally at home on Windows. And of course, most of our customers are running Windows. I can see a bunch of questions here that I think I've already answered. Oh, someone's asking about mobile. Could we build an app within which you could browse? Yeah, we could, of course, build a secure browser app. The problem is, I think, user behavior. Most users are going to go to the default browser, and on iOS, that's really always going to be Safari. It's hard to change that. But also on the browser, it's surprising how little browsing happens in browser on mobile rather. It's amazing how little browsing happens in browsers. What we've been seeing is that with the appification of so many capabilities, when you're using a phone or a tablet, you tend to spend most of your time in apps, and each of the apps then has its own browser window built into that, and the operating systems really don't allow you to try to wrap all of that in. So on the desktop, the browser is sort of a single point. When you want to go to a website, you're always going to the default browser. But that kind of standardization and behavior really doesn't exist on the mobile devices, so it's a much harder problem. We actually do have, especially for consumers, VPN tools that allow you to just turn on a VPN on your phone. So if you're on an open Wi-Fi, you're in a hotel, all of your traffic's automatically secured and protected. Whether you're on a desktop or on a mobile, but we're not locking down the browser itself. But that does deal with the sniffing and the intercept kind of problems. We're not willing to give a timeline on the Chrome support. Someone's asking when that's going to come out. Certainly, it looks like it's going to be this year, but engineering would beat me over the head with a stick if I tried to give you an exact date. Purchase. We sell directly off the website. If you go to our website, www.getpassages.com, it's actually all very transparent. The pricing is right on there. There are discounts for large quantity, but other than that, it's very cards face up, no haggling kind of scenario, and yeah, it's all direct right now. Minimum system requirements. I believe we need 4 gigs of RAM. We recommend 4 gigs of RAM, and you need a modern 64-bit host operating system and a CPU that will support the virtualization. As long as you've got that, you're good to go. So it's fairly light on impact. And most semi-modern systems are going to be just fine. Consumer version. When will the consumer version be available? Again, there's a stick beating involved. If I give you a date, it is this year, and hopefully early this year, because we really want to get that version out for the OPM victims. And as soon as that's out, it's going to be generally available. So we want to get that as quick as we possibly can. Can you push the web traffic back through your corporate proxy to allow you to use your own rules? Not right now, but that is something we're hearing from people, and we're investigating that, so we'll probably have that covered fairly soon. Someone's asking if our connections to the USG are going to cause problems for our adoption of an anonymity tool. While Passages actually has extremely strong anonymity, that isn't really the selling point that we're making to people. So we're not trying to sell it as a privacy anonymity vehicle. It's mostly, we talk about it as a security tool, and the hardcore anonymity it provides is sort of a side benefit. At the same time, this technology actually all evolved from Anonymizer.com, which I founded back in 1995. And if you Google around, you'll see that we've been doing this for 20 years, and there's no one claiming ever that any of our customers have ever been ratted out to the U.S. government or to any other government. And so while we do provide security tools to them, we feel that it would be a business reputation suicide to ever put in any kind of weaknesses or vulnerabilities. And frankly, I personally would not allow my name to be attached to any product like that. So we take a very, very hard line on that. If you look at the Apple versus FBI, I've been doing quite a bit of public speaking and talking to reporters. We are very, very hard, actually, on the Apple side of this. We believe that security is the big problem. That's what's causing the day-to-day damage throughout this country and around the world. And the impact of putting in backdoors like that would be devastating and also create precedent around the world, right? You're not just going to give it to the U.S. government. You're going to give it to everyone. And I'll get off my soapbox at that point. Is Linux support planned? As a host operating system, not soon. We'd love to support Linux. I love Linux as a desktop. Just the number of people out there is so small, it has not made business sense to us. I think if we found a large enough population of people that use Linux as the desktop, we'd go in and support it. It turns out that while the VM would move around very easily, there's a huge amount of system-specific hooks to make it transparent to the user, and that's really the problem. If you're a Linux kind of hacker, really technically sophisticated, you could probably get much of the functionality of Passages by running your own VMs and burning them down and reverting to snapshots on a regular basis. That's just not possible for the average user, and so that's why we've gone the way we have. Flash, is that updated by passages of the sysadmins? Flash is automatically updated. When we update passages, we push a new update every 6 to 8 weeks, and that updates the passages, the browser, and all the plugins that we provide with it. So that's fully managed by us. And of course, if for some reason there's a vulnerability in the Flash or whatever, you're really not vulnerable to it anyway because it's all inside of it. Someone's asked for the website again. That would be www.getpassages, GETPASSAGES.com. And just click on the pricing link and it'll show you all the different options and the pricing. Click right there. We'll get you hooked up with a demo. All right, and I think I'm out of time now. There's a couple more questions. We'll try to get back to you by email, but you really appreciate all the interaction and feedback. Questions have been flooding in faster than I can get to them. So thank you so much. And yeah, if you want us to follow up with you, just put a question in here. We'll make sure we get back to everyone who had a question, wants to be contacted, or didn't get a follow-up. And thank you so much for listening.